Hello everyone, Professor Kagan here. I'd like to spend some time talking about the MySims series of games that released from 2007 to 2010. This spin-off of the Sims franchise aims itself at kids and people who may not be interested in the general gameplay of The Sims proper, releasing on the more casual-focused Nintendo Wii, with a couple of the games receiving ports to other platforms. Sims in MySims do not have needs, and the games generally focus their gameplay around a town setting, performing tasks to help residents and improve the town. Without further ado, let's get going. MySims released in September 2007 on Wii, with a PC release the following year. We'll be using the latter version for this video. To describe MySims in a sentence would be to say that the game is reminiscent of Animal Crossing if all the villagers were even more one-note and boring. You've come to town to improve it and attract new residents per request of Mayor Rosalind. You'll start with the residents already in town. The requests they make of you involve building living spaces or furniture for them, with the goal of the game to satisfy these residents, again attract more, and acquire blueprints to unlock new builds and items and improve the star rating of said town. They call this the work of an essence user, of which you are. These essences are gathered throughout the world via various methods of shaking trees, or metal detection, or simply talking to Sims. They're used to build and customize the constructs you are tasked with creating. Socialization in these games is still Simlish, but they only ever really speak when they give you things to do, so the bulk of their personality is displayed via their appearances and living spaces. The socialization system is incredibly bare bones compared to the usual Sims games. You're given basic interaction options that are uninteresting and bland. You're not going to be doing any flirting here. Really, it's only just you can gather certain essences. The build system is very wonky and uninspired, and templates for objects are provided for furnitures Sims want you to create. They have requirements for specific essences, usually related to the Sims' interest. I found that these templates made me feel restricted, and I couldn't be as creative as I'd have liked. This, coupled with the cumbersome, wonky controls, that are even worse with the Wii pointer, make the build system a pain to use. As the game goes on and you improve the town, you'll unlock new parts of the world for Sims to live in, and for you to find more exotic essences. There's a desert, an Asian forest, and of course you start out in your general town area. The PC version comes with 6 extra townies and new essences. There's an online mode as well, but unfortunately I wasn't able to look into that for this video. Looking at this game in a modern context, when there's so many games out there that do what this game does and better, like for example Animal Crossing, Harvest Moon, Minecraft, the actual mainline Sims games, it should come as no surprise that I can't recommend this game. The build system isn't fun, the characters are very much one note and bland, and I didn't have fun in my playthrough. Having said that, I really did enjoy this game as a kid, but, you know, tastes change, and I really did thought I would enjoy this, going through it again, but rose-colored glasses are usually false, unfortunately. It's not all bad, though. My Sims Kingdom was released in October 2008, and much like the previous game, you'll be completing tasks and building structures for Sims. This time, instead of a singular town, you've got an entire open world to traverse with 2 party members tagging along. Instead of being referred to as an essence user, you are now a wandelier, a sort of wizard that has the power to manipulate objects and essences into builds, chosen by King Roland. There's no star system to adhere to this time when improving the lands. Instead, you can build up points and the king of the land will send you unlockables via a carrier pigeon. For example, costumes your sim can wear. The open world is spread out into themed islands, such as an animal park, mad science, or western cowboy themes. These islands, of course, are full of Sims that need help, and are a lot more interesting than they were in the previous title. There's more to it when you socialize, and they've been given varied animations and details to make them stand out. There's just also a lot more humor in the writing this time around. The developers really went out of their way to bring personality into the interactions and cutscenes involving the characters. When you arrive at an island, you'll be introduced to its residents and provided with issues to solve for them. This can range anywhere from collecting items to herding animals, or convincing Sims to do or not do something, or build something. Speaking of which, the building mechanic in this game allows the player to move about outside in a predetermined grid area, but still giving quite a bit of room to work with. And while there's no furniture construction in this game, you can still make buildings of course, they replace it with a more interactive building type that I call Contraption Works. It's basically a system that allows you to solve puzzles and build machines for Sims with gears, switches, windmills, water pipes, belts, and even more. There's no set template to how you can utilize these contraption parts, and the system overall is a monumental improvement over the previous game. You can really make it your own. The annoying part, however, is that essences are now used as construction material, and it can be quite the grind to accumulate said material. I often found myself spending a good 20 to 30 minutes wandering around and gathering up material, especially if the recipe for unlocking a scroll, this game's blueprint, required fish. The fishing mechanic is easy enough to use, but it takes way too long to get the amount of fish you need because you're not always going to get the ones you need when you catch one. It's just random. Loading times can be a bit of a pain, especially if you're going to change your Sim's costume. You're given multiple catalogs to select clothing out of, and it can take a good amount of time to switch from each. However, in total, MySims Kingdom really improves on the previous title. It's not an awful time waster game. In fact, it's a pretty good introductory title for kids if they want to get into games that involve complex machinery with gears and other parts. The characters are much more memorable, the writing is pretty good, and I had a much better time with this one in general. I recommend it. My Sims Party was released in March 2009 and isn't particularly interesting. It's somewhat of a mash between the first My Sims game and modern Mario Party. It's dull, easy, and grating. Now, to be fair, it might be that I had to play this game all by myself with computer-controlled characters. But at any rate, we're again tasked to improve a town, and this time, we do it by winning sets of minigames that make varying use of the wonderful waggle technology of the Wii. During these minigames, you and your opponents have stats that can help you out during certain minigames. These stats are power, speed, stamina, and luck. These minigames are part of what is called a festival, and each festival has a host. Normally, the name of the fest corresponds to the sim hosting it in personality. I'm not going to go over each and every minigame you can play, nor will I touch much on the town. All you can really do is customize buildings and get hints on minigames from townies. All in all, it's mostly an average party game. You'd have a more entertaining time with an older Mario Party. I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the next game. My Sims Racing was released in June 2009. It is a bit of an interesting change of pace from previous entries. Yet again, we are tasked with improving a town after a famous resident went missing, and the dastardly Morcubus tries to buy up the town to turn it into a landfill. Before we go any further, I would like to mention something interesting about this Morcubus character. We'll see his company, MorcuCorp, come up in the Sims 3 World Adventures as the subject of some quests, and he himself becomes the main antagonist again in the future, as we'll see later. You'll start out the game as usual by customizing your sim, and after that you'll start building an entry-level cart. You'll be improving your town and unlocking new parts for your vehicle by performing tasks and races for Sims around you. This raises the star level and unlocks new regions to race in that are accompanied by new racetracks. These tracks are somewhat varied in style and length, but are often reused for several activities such as time trials, pass the gate challenges, obstacle courses, and object collecting courses. Finishing these raise relationship levels with Sims that issue them, and help you unlock new car parts, which you can add to your car to improve stats, such as handling, speed, acceleration, weight, etc. You can also find these blueprints around secret areas in the track. Once you've completed enough of these races, you can participate in a race challenge that unlocks new regions and raise the town star rating in your seemingly never-ending quest to improve variations of the same town you've seen in MySims and MySims Party. Up to now, it seems like a fairly standard racing game aimed at children, with some varied courses, challenges other than simple racing against opponents, but I've been deviating from what makes this game a pain. The controls are god-awful, just to put it plainly. Now, to be fair, you can play this game with a GameCube controller or a classic controller. I played the game on my Wii U, and I don't have a classic controller with me at this time, so I had to play with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck combo. Of course, motion controls do play a part in the experience, but the big issue that makes driving awful is drifting, which is very uncomfortable because it's tied to braking. That is to say, the brake button. And while that is realistic, other kart racers usually have a dedicated drift button. You know, for example, Mario Kart or Crash Team Nitro Racing or what have you. Realism, unfortunately, doesn't always make for quality gameplay. And what you have to do is double tap the brake to enter a drift, and if you're not paying attention, you'll find yourself grinding to a halt mid-turn. Which, I guess it's not awful, because the game isn't incredibly difficult. You can recover pretty quickly. But the fact that this can happen at all is still a royal pain. Car handling isn't incredibly comfortable either. It's like trying to thread a snake through a hole with a block of iron stuck in its tummy. Very slippy, but heavy. To be honest, I recommend just skipping it entirely and just go play Mario Kart or Crash Team Racing. You'll have a much better time with either one of those. Next up, we've got MySims Agents. It was released in September 2009, and to be honest, is kind of a breath of fresh air for the series. It leaves behind all notions of building homes or furniture, town ratings, racing, or even partying. This is an action-adventure puzzle game that starts your sim off as a detective, helping out the locals of your town until you get promoted to your own detective agency. This happens right after you complete your first case, which kind of serves as a tutorial and introduction to the villain of the story, Morcubus, who is yet again behind a large scheme that you'll uncover as you progress through the game. Once you've got your agency, you can hire agents to do jobs for you while you're progressing through the story. Each agent has attributes that can determine the likelihood of success on a case you assign them. You can level these attributes up by including furniture or playing music in the HQ for your staff to listen to. You'll unlock these by having agents do jobs or completing story missions, or finding them scattered in chests around the world. Much like how you find costumes in MySims Kingdom, which do return here, allowing you to change your clothing in HQ. This goes for unlocking agents as well. And I guess for the music thing, I guess it's kind of like buying that music for your baby to listen to make them smarter. Anybody remember that? And anyway, solving cases start with your tool set. You're given 3. A magnifying glass, a crowbar, and a wrench. These are used to gather clues, modify objects, or bash up and break things if you so desire. They can be upgraded to perform other actions, such as tracing electrical current later on in the game. The cases proper include interviewing Sims, solving small puzzles, or utilizing the tools you're given to interact with objects relevant to the case. As you gather clues, you'll start to narrow down suspects via a process of elimination, and attributing certain clues to certain suspects. The sim with the most clues is the culprit. The case system also includes salvaging objects from machinery and fixing them in a MySims Kingdom gear style, along with a match-em-up game with molecules for forensic analysis. The writing in this game is a lot like MySims Kingdom as well, and somewhat darker. There's jokes about dismemberment, strange Sims biting people, and others that kind of make up this morbid opposition to the usually cheery, happy-go-lucky atmosphere of these games. Our character also has a personality and speaks. But they also have your usual underdog detective personality, determined to find justice, willing to go the unusual route to solve a case, that sort of thing. It may not be especially creative, but it is a welcome change from literally nothing in the previous games. It's genuinely a fun experience, and honestly, just like MySims Kingdom, I don't think it's a bad introduction to these sorts of games for children. I think this really does live up to what it needs to be. Our last but not least title of the video is MySims Sky Heroes, which has been released on the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, the Nintendo DS, and the Nintendo Wii in September 2010. For this segment, we'll be using the PlayStation 3 version of the game for its HD resolution and lack of motion control, thankfully. Like previous games, such as Agents and Racing, the game is very plot-focused, starting off with a pilot, your player character, crash landing on an island full of Resistance members. They're fighting against our dear friend Morcubus, who has made it his goal to take over the world, using his human and robot pilots that you must face off against. Of course, like previous games, you'll be able to customize your sim, along with your planes like in MySims Racing. You'll start out with one plane and acquire more over time, along with parts, weapons, and paint. These can be unlocked by doing well in your missions as you progress through the game. Speaking of which, missions are chosen from a world map. There's no large interconnected world or central hub, and as I had just briefly mentioned, there's an indicator of how well you can do in missions. This indicator is a medal ranking system. Usually, this is dependent on how many targets you've taken out or how fast you've completed the mission. You must rank first, second, or third to continue the story, and you will get at least one part if you get the third rank, and more if you score higher. It's fine, really, and it actually reminds me of the progression system in the Cars video game, where you must place a certain position or fulfill a certain condition to progress in the story. Though I'd argue Cars is more of a well put together game, but I digress. So how does the game play? To summarize it in a sentence, simply watch or play the first level of Star Fox 64, and it serves just as well as a tutorial as the actual tutorial of the game. You've got your standard movements, aileron rolls, somersaults, U-turns, and a standard gun mounted under your plane with an alternate weapon that fires rockets. Not unlike the bombs on the R-Wing in Star Fox, although these will actually seek out your opponent. The planes handle okay enough, though I wish turning was a bit more sharp. Perhaps that's something I could tune with my plane. I'm not really sure. But turning was wide and long, so I typically just utilized U-turns to actually get my plane in the opposite direction. The arenas, for all intents and purposes, are kind of like the all-range mode segments of Star Fox levels. They're all styled differently and adhere to themes much like islands in MySims Kingdoms. There's sci-fi cities, Aztec temples, among others. They're just a large, circular area that you can just, you have free reign to do anything or go anywhere to accomplish your goal for the mission, instead of being, like, on rails during a standard Star Fox level. To sum up, MySims Sky Heroes is an alright flight game, but I really think I'd sooner tell people to pick up Star Fox 64 3D, especially since I've done nothing but compare that game to this one, or Pilot Wings if you want a more polished experience that takes everything this game does and does it better, not to mention just how much more memorable these other games are. I'd recommend you try those instead. Thank you all for watching. I hope I provided some entertainment and that you do try out MySims Kingdom and MySims Agents. I really do think they're good games that need attention, especially for younger folk. I think they'll really get a kick out of it. I really appreciate every view I get as well. I just wanted to take a moment and be thankful for that. When I check my videos every so often to see how they're doing, I'm always surprised at the numbers. So I really do appreciate it. I really hope you enjoyed this. Once again, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the future. Goodbye.